And the answer is no, not by anybody who's responsible to the Bible. Now, Philo is very complicated. I don't even recommend you read him. He might have thought of the logos, which is more or less interchangeable with pneuma, if you like, as a person, as a son pre-existing, but I'd leave Philo well alone. He's a horrible mixture of Greek philosophy and the Hebrew Bible. Don't need him. But does anybody within the biblical sphere think of the Logos as a separate person? Absolutely not. And I'm happy to tell you that the scholars at Oxford are very clear on this particular subject. I'll just read you a line or two from Dr. Caird, who was the Regius Professor of Biblical Exegesis. That's biblical explaining at Oxford University. He says this: how is John 1:1 to be translated? And I'm quoting from Caird, professor of Oxford, at Oxford, his book on theology. How is John 1:1 to be translated? The solution is, he says, that logos for John primarily means purpose. That's right. In the beginning was the purpose in the mind of God. I'm quoting now, the purpose which was God's own being. It reflected God's own being, because your words reflect who you are. As a man thinks, so is he. You are your word, if you like. That's what John is saying there. It then goes on to say, quoting Professor Caird from Oxford again, it is surely a very conceivable thought that God is wholly identified with his purpose of love, and this purpose took human form in Jesus of Nazareth. That's brilliant. I think that's exactly right. There's no pre-existing son. Do not read John 1:1 as if it said in the beginning was the capital word. It doesn't say that. There are 50 translations, in fact, which don't say him. They say it, and that's perfectly legitimate because logos is an it. Until it becomes Jesus, then it's a he. But it doesn't become Jesus, the logos, until Jesus is born, when he begins to exist. Then you've got a human being who is the logos, the embodiment of the purpose and mind of God. The gospel, if you like. In the beginning was the gospel, God's immortality plan. It was with God. Because in Hebrew thinking, something that's with you is your baby, if you like. It's a thing that you treasure. It's your purpose, your mind, your intention. And it then became the man Messiah in John 1:14. That's beautiful. Once you say in the beginning was the Son, you've then unfortunately contradicted Matthew and Luke absolutely flat. You've made nonsense out of them. And you now have to deal with a second divine person. And originally, Justin Martyr simply said this was a son begotten sometime before Genesis. That's chaos enough, but it got worse than that. Gradually, as the Trinity developed, they began to say that there was a God the Son co-equal with the Father. And that's the cause, I think, of a great deal of our agony and problems. Again, the top scholars know. One, for instance, says that no responsible scholar says the Trinity is in the Bible. That's a strong statement by a lifelong expert, Hansen. Another one, Dean Matthews, who wrote in the Telegraph in London when I was growing up every Saturday, he said, everybody with a rudimentary knowledge of history, even an elementary knowledge of history, knows that the Trinity has nothing to do with the New Testament. That's right. No, Jesus was a Jew. When asked about the greatest commandment, he simply recites the Shema. The Shema is a non-Trinitarian creed. Ask any Jew. This is the embarrassing thing for churches, that while clutching the Bible and proclaiming loudly sola scriptura, they in fact are not doing sola scriptura when it comes to defining God. This is what has to change, and you have to help people by writing to the newspaper, talking to the pastors, engaging whomever you can on that critical issue of getting the first commandment right. And Jesus then is the Messiah, the Son of God. But pre-existent word should have a little w, it should be an it. All things are made through it. By it was nothing made that was made. That it then became a he when Jesus began to exist. That is simplicity itself, I think.